$1 million to fix streets.
$1 million would fix one street that's coming up.
Can't do it.
Yep. Valley Trails. It's slated in the next 2 to 3 years to have to be completely replaced,
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that in sections, and,
because it's $1 million. You know, it's just,
but we'll do it as it comes
Well,
in.
that might be the time, Brian, to bring up your $1 million suggestion. If it's cheaper to do an entire street for $1 million than it is to do it in 5 years, then maybe that's what we need to do.
Yeah, because that's the only way you'll be able to get Valley Trails. I mean.
one of the other
you can't do it
challenges, though,
once.
with trying to do it all at once, to be honest with you, is the prevailing wage issue.
Oh, once you go over the certain amount.
Once you go over, I think it's $250,000, then you're gonna kick in the prevailing wage, which is really gonna add 30% to the cost. I don't know what the number would be, but it's a substantial increase, to my understanding.
Craig, could you get the document that we have and forward it so that we can make sure there's no prepayment penalty before we decide? Sure.
With some guidance and some detailed discussion about where we currently are with the reserve, if we keep ourselves well-funded for true emergencies, there's probably extra reserve money too that we can throw at roads and look at some of these repairs, right? Just grab some of the money we already have, as long as, again, we don't deplete the emergency fund that we have to have. What's really left? What do we really need? What's left? And can we use some of that money to fund some of these bigger repairs? I mean, we've got some portion of money that we really don't need to have in reserve that we could use for that type of thing. And if we've been discussing other ways, other alternatives to the vehicle sticker tax that might even net us a little more road money yearly basis. That combined with maybe getting some of that money, maybe starts to get us towards where you really want to be on the roads. I'm all for fixing roads. That's big debt, long-term debt.
I'm with you in just, where I'm at and how we kind of work. Don't think of it as $1 million. Think of it as $8,000 a month.
I look at it as $1 million.
I understand.
Plus interest.
Yeah.
It's $1 million plus interest. No, maybe the Jim, we just kind of take it up to the reserve discussion, where we're at, what do we really need to have, and what might be available for some of this.
I have no idea what we really need to have, and nobody does.
I was gonna say, that's been talked about for many years, to be honest with you. I mean, and nobody really has a sound answer. I mean, $1 million is about 1/3 of our budget. And that's kind of pretty much where the auditor has always been comfortable, if my memory's correct, Jim. He's always said that's probably a good place to be. Is that a right, wrong? I think it's an opinion of, there's that many people in the room. You could come up with an answer for that. Again, something we can sit down and look at. We can look at the, cash flow and everything else, some of the things that we might be able to figure out. How is the cash flow, September versus, after the taxes get put out.
If there's money there that we can free up to do some of this, I'm all for talking about that.
Okay. So I think there is some interest in that. We'll look at that, get some numbers out. Craig will help us by looking at the loan documents, please.
Yes, sir.
Other conversation, thought?
Okay.
What else, Brian? Anything else? All right. Go around the table. Craig, do you have anything?
Fine, thank you, sir.
You have anything, sir?
No, I sent an update to you and to the Code Enforcement Board today on all the code enforcement issues. And
I'll pass that along when I get back to the office. I'll forward it. I think it's okay. Just gives you guys an update on where we're at with the one issue down on Route 8 that we have going on, as well as some of the other just basic code enforcements so I'll forward that when I get back. Okay.
that all, there's nothing pending or urgent or pressing that needs to be done. We have a hearing coming up later this month. I think we have to provide notice to the bank that has an interest in the property, but that's, we talked to Craig about that. Good to go on that.
Yeah, I believe notice was sent August 5th, but you said it.
Sounds good. General discussion, keep going around the table, Rob.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I would probably want to discuss, or at least align on how we express some concern, is trying to get the employee manual, personnel policy manual finalized. I've been through it a couple times, and I've got a lot of different notes, and I believe that by the close the business of the next council meeting, it becomes final unless we've agreed to not agree on it. And, you know, there's a lot of questions I have about it, and not the least of which I want to make sure that all the stakeholders have had their say and discussed their concerns, and that would be like from an admin standpoint, obviously Craig, but he was so involved in putting it together, I'm assuming he might have addressed his, but Director Yelton and Chief Goodnow, you know, they have the opportunity to provide feedback, and they discuss it with their folks, just so everyone's transparent about what's going on. And you know, there's some things in there. The paid time off, we could probably have a seminar on that, trying to understand that in terms of the formula and trying to figure that thing out. I've read it 10 times, and it makes my head hurt. But how do you want us to communicate to you any concerns we have right now that they would be addressed prior to the next council meeting?
Well, I thought I'd ask you guys to go ahead and send me an email with your questions, and then we'll either try and answer them. If not, then we'll have the discussion when we get there, if you can send them to me. Because
Yeah,
that
and
way-
I would not want to bog down this meeting or a council meeting, just going through every single line item by line item. There's a more efficient way to do it. Some of it's as simple as just definitions.
That's why I was
I mean,
hoping
but
you'd
then
send me
there's
an
some
email.
other things in there that, and I know that I'm a big fan of best practices, and I can appreciate that Craig brought a lot of this work from, you know, previously successful experience. There's nothing wrong with that. But my question would be, did we really intend to end up with some of the stuff that's in there? Surveillance and tuition reimbursement and those type of things. We don't have anything in the budget for tuition reimbursement. I'm a proponent of drug testing at all levels, big fan of it. We don't have anything specifically in our budget for drug testing, pre-employment, post-accident, just random. We don't really have the money set aside for that.
Mhm.
You know, some of the things, okay, you know, the expensive travel locations, I get that, it's in my employee manual at work because we do travel there, some of it just doesn't seem relevant to us. And I don't want to get bogged down in minutia that's really not big picture stuff here, but I want to make sure that we we have a chance to look at some of these concerns.
If you would send them to me, and then we'll see, you know, we'll give you feedback. If it doesn't address it, then maybe we have another separate caucus meeting, round table, say we're gonna spend the next 2 hours, we're gonna just
Well, where's
discuss.
everybody else at? Have you talked to the chief and director Yelton?
I have not, I've sent it out to them, they have it, but I haven't talked to them. I'm waiting for their feedback. I understand why we're asking for their feedback, but I can assure you, when your company put your employee manual together, they didn't call Rod and ask him for his feedback.
We
Wait a
have
minute,
20,
wait a
we
minute.
have 2,800
It doesn't
employees in my
matter.
company, we don't have 14.
It doesn't matter. It's the principle of, you know what, I appreciate his feedback, and he will give us feedback, I'm sure. But the last time I checked, most companies don't go out and solicit their, employees for the feedback on how they want their employee handled.
We're not a company, this is a different situation.
Well,
Again, I'm not knocking the work that's done here, there's good work.
No, I know that.
The manual
That's not
needed-
even
The
the
manual
case.
needed to be updated.
I know.
And this is a quantum leap from where we were, there's no doubt about it,
But, yeah, your feedback, your questions, your comments, whatever, and then maybe we need to have another meeting.
I want everybody to,
I've
everybody
not
aligned,
received.
I want everybody to understand the paid time off thing.
Right,
So that maybe at the council meeting, we'll all discuss that, because Jim and I have discussed it a couple times, and it usually ends in a head-hurting experience, so.
I asked for feedback at the last council meeting, and I received 0.
At the last council.
Yes, I did. I
I
sat
got
here,
this at the last council.
and I said, when you go through it, start sending me your questions, and so we can get them answered, so we don't have to spend an absorbent amount of time at the caucus or next council meeting. That way we can get them answered prior to the next council meeting. And I've received 0 comments or feedback.
And if I remember correctly, like the tuition and stuff like that, that was in the original one, I believe, and some of this is.
And if you're interested in removing it, that's fine. I mean, that's the
Travel
feedback
section.
we need to
We
see.
thought about in terms of,
Tuition
do we
was,
really want to offer that, and do we have the budget for it?
Mhm. No, and I'm not opposed to any of your comment, don't get me wrong. The feedback is great, but if you get it to us and then we can evaluate it, and then it might be as simple as, wow, he's right, this shouldn't be in there. You know what I mean? It could be that simple, but without going through it line item by line item right now, which it's this council's prerogative to do if that's what they want.
I think my bigger picture concerns, I could scope, and it'd be easier, do you have a PDF of this?
Yes.
Can you send it to me? It'd be easier for me just to annotate the PDF with the sticky notes.
Okay.
It'll be easier for you to circulate.
Yeah. Mhm.
And then, do the chief and director Yelton know that we got 2 weeks really to get their feedback?
Yeah, I think that, yeah,
Buck has had it for a while, he's
Okay.
read it. so
I just want
he's-
to make sure they know the clock's ticking.
yeah.
on-
Right, he's had it for probably probably too much. I mean, he had the original, or the one we did
First
back
draft or
in,
whatever we
yeah,
got.
or whatever, and I think it's just been slight tweaks,
yes.
so. I know he's had it, and he's read it, and, because he asked me a few things about it.
Chief,
You know anything?
I think the biggest discussion we could have as a group, detailed discussion, is the whole paid time off thing and how it's figured and how it's used, and I think that's probably where most people's questions are gonna lie on this. Would you agree with that? I know you had a concern about it,
I've got other concerns. Honestly, I misinterpreted your comments, Mayor. I thought because of this, I thought this was an up or down kind of vote. I didn't know, can we still change this?
Yeah,
Okay.
Yep.
All right. That was my confusion.
no, we still have time, we can still get through this, and I mean, it's not, we'll figure it out.
If you send a PDF, I'll hit you my stuff back quick, and then we can say, well, yeah, that really is not supposed to be there, and then we can focus on what's really important and relevant here. But if we could maybe, at the council meeting, plan on discussing this PTO thing.
And to a degree, if everybody can send it back to Craig or myself, I'm okay with either one. Craig will forward them on to me. One of the things I don't want to do is, let me figure out how to make sure we do this right. Sending it to other council members is fine as long as they don't comment on it, just so they can see what questions he has, as long as they don't try and reply back to him on it and have a little
Oh, you're
discussion.
asking me?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I mean, yeah, you could go back and forth or meet like this. I think when you get into a circumstance where you have everybody's on a group email, that's a problem.
But if you send it, he can send it, just don't reply back to it, because that way they can see his questions
Yeah,
and
that's
concerns.
absolutely fine.
Or
So,
just
I think the
reply
best
to
thing
Craig.
Or
do.
reply to Craig only.
I'll send them back to Craig.
Okay, well, I'm just saying, if you sent yours out, Mary can see what your concerns are. That doesn't mean she's gonna comment back to you, but at least she might, well, yeah, I understand what this means. Makes sense. That way we can try and get through some of these that might be easier, but everybody reply back to Craig only. Why don't we do that?
Put a lot of time and effort into updating the document. We just obviously want to make sure that what you go forward with
No, we
is the
wanna
right
make sure it's,
one. So,
right, yep.
okay.
Is everybody okay with that?
So you want us to refer to like the chapter or the page, or how do you want us to ask
I
questions?
can do that. Page number.
Page number and then a specific question.
I'm going to take your PDF and put electronic notes in it.
I will make one comment, Mayor, that every time I've done one of these, and I've done it for several companies, I do ask my managers to look at it before, and to give me comments before I send it out. So
Okay,
that's just,
fair, that's fine.
And I had the same experience.
Wait, careful.
No.
So, and it goes both ways. You've got them, some do, some don't, it's out there. So, and by the way, just because I'm not accustomed to having the managers add with the employees, that doesn't mean when the chief sends it, I'm throwing it in the garbage. I respect what he's gonna send us, and it will be evaluated as comments. I want to go on record as making that
Certainly
statement.
didn't mean to imply that you did not.
No.
Just want to make sure that the right
No, and
folks have had
that's fair.
had a chance to provide input.
Yep. What else you have? I think are we okay there, folks? Okay. Is that it, right?
I got several things. Where are we on code enforcement?
Right here. I think we,
In what area?
Well, we discussed potentially outsourcing. I'm sorry. We discussed
Bite your
having
tongue.
Northern Kentucky area plan
No.
do our code enforcement for us.
You mean for the joint board?
Yeah.
for the joint board.
Yes.
Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah. And I don't know where we are on that. Are we moving forward? Are we considering it? Have we dropped it? Where are we?
Well, I'd like to consider it.
I
from
thought
a
we
cost saving standpoint.
Yes, I thought we were actually considering it. We had last month, Jason came in, gave us his talk and everything, and I think it was at that point where we were just gonna digest it for 30 days because we didn't have to make the decision the next day.
Right, but I thought you had committed to go back 3 years and tell us about the attorney fee.
Sorry.
So you have that.
I have,
You don't have to do it tonight. If you could just forward that so we can have some.
I have copies.
Okay, great.
Excuse me, let me rephrase this, folks. Craig made copies. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you I did this, but I did have a start on them, I will give you that. So we do have those for that.
Okay,
So this, I think that's where we left it, Jim, to be honest with you, and
we did.
So that's what we were gonna do. We were gonna go, we had, I think, the first year, but we asked, it was asked to go back the last couple of years.
Okay, yeah, 3 years of data is a good look, because you go from $600 to $6,000 to
And you got,
21,000.
and you gotta look at some of the further back years, $600. If you look, there's only a couple of months, 4 months.
Mhm.
Not to say it would still only be a couple thousand, even if you times it by 4, you know, or 3, you know what I mean?
And there was this looked at through attorney fees? I mean,
Yes,
This wasn't looked at just strictly from code enforcement board, right? Because
Correct.
that was never put in, attorney fees were never put in there, they
No.
were always lumped with.
we went back through the legal bills to create this.
So what were you saying about 2010? It shows $581.25 on 4 separate entries. Was that the total expenditure
Yeah,
for the year?
well, I believe that's all we could find, correct?
You did that while I was at the Institute with Sue, so I don't know.
I don't believe we could find all the legal bills. We were gonna call up and ask for, from back in Mike Duncan, ask for those, and I didn't want to incur the expense.
So does the same hold true for the 2011 data, that we only, that's not, that may only be a snapshot, it's not accurate?
No, if you flip to the other
But
page.
it's, yeah, 11, okay, so 11 is $6,000, 10 is in question, and then 2012 was $21,000.
Yes.
What happened in 2012? Your savings is $21,000 if that becomes your typical year, but based on what you have here, I mean, it's one data point. I mean, that's what happened in
Right.
2012.
But even 6,000 is a huge number compared to 0.
Okay, but we're selling the savings as $21,000, or that's what we spent last year. What,
That's what we
look,
spent
that's what
last
happened. I mean, that's
Well,
a
I
big change.
guess you'd have to go back to and look at the citations that were written, wouldn't you, just to see what that, if that involved anything.
Probably so. To
I
be
mean,
honest
you know,
with
if you
you,
had more blight issues and people didn't comply and all that.
maybe we're starting to catch up with the blighted properties.
Could be a lawsuit too. I mean, you did have I sent an email on the Turby lawsuit, and I
Might
don't
add,
know the parameters of that because I don't have the full file, but some of that could have hit last year as well, just monitoring the lawsuit. But on speculation.
No, we've had conversations that haven't done anything for a while, but if you look at 2012 legal bills, something was done.
yeah. Well, I think the last year we've been a lot more aggressive. There's no question that the code enforcement has been a lot busier with trying to address issues.
I did, for my bill sectioned off, now have a separate section for every lawsuit and every code. And then the code enforcement's one section, you know, individual lawsuits, so you don't, you know, there'll be general code enforcement, lawsuit A, lawsuit B. So you should generally be able to follow what they are. A little more detailed thus far this year, but I haven't really done anything until very recently.
But do I understand this correctly, that when they have a meeting, we still have to provide attorney, and we still have to provide someone to take the minutes?
At the present time?
Correct, at
Yes.
the present time,
With the present system we have, we will incur,
So would that be, just off the top of your head, like maybe 4,000, 5,000 a year just to cover meetings and nothing else? I mean, is that,
I mean, that's probably a reasonable number.
I mean,
It's
somewhere around there.
probably 2 hours of time,
Okay.
you know, once a month.
so 2
And then
hours legal time plus
prep
2
and
hours of?
whatever, 4 hours a month, that'd be $500.
Okay.
I would think that would be probably, you know, close to a minimum, is my guess.
I was gonna say, because if
So
there's
we-
issues that come up, you're gonna.
Because it's hard to anticipate what we're gonna have, because we don't know what issues are gonna be out there. But we do know if they have a meeting every month, this is what we have to provide, attorney, legal plus someone to take the minutes, so we have that expense. So, you know, that's easily,
Yeah, and
Like-
you've asked the question exactly, probably the way I like to see it. If we're gonna quote savings numbers, I'd like them to be at real numbers. That's a real number, you know, because you could
Right.
say,
Yeah.
over the course of 12 months, we know this expenditure is gonna happen, and there could be other stuff.
right?
Okay, that's fair.
I just don't want to start grasping at numbers to justify a change. I want to understand what the real savings is. If things happen, I understand that there would be situations we don't account for where we would incur an expense under the current system, but
So
what
the
are the,
minimum, we would say, is probably 5,000, 5 to 6,000.
Say at
We
least.
just don't know what the max is.
Right.
We have
Minimum
no
would be-
idea what is.
Off the top of my
beyond that.
head, with the city attorney and the clerk, we're probably at between 5 and 6,000. Roughly.
Yeah, you do get some stuff.
the joint CEB, there's no legal expenses? Any
No.
circumstance where we incur a legal expense?
In the past 7 years, there's been none.
Us,
For any of the
we
cities.
have.
Now, the only time it becomes legal fees is when they send it back to us to take action, we send it to Todd, but Todd accepts those legal fees until the process in the courts is finished.
Right.
So in theory, at this point, we have no legal fees.
And then, but the person that's being charged, or the person that.
Legal fees would be able to
Would
be.
be included in
Yeah.
that, so
And
the
he would-
city still wouldn't, okay.
Yep, that would be part of the lawsuit, is recovering the legal fees involved.
Correct, which is then determined by the court, so then you submit your application for fees. So the court does, it's generally not going to be expensive, but the courts then do survey that as some protection for the people being sued.
We will have another ordinance coming up at some point as well with regards to this, one way or another. If we decide to move out of this and go ahead and move to the interlocal agreement, joint code enforcement board, I think we still might have to change it, but we have an ordinance that maybe demonstrates why it's been less, how's the word I want to use? Ultimately, our ordinance states that the only thing that they can recover is $300 in legal fees when they go to court. If a lawyer has to put all this together and go to court, I can assure you, it's gonna be well over $300. But our ordinance says that's all they can recover. I don't know how that's in there, but I think that we need to correct that, whether we stay with our own system or we move on. I don't know how we can say that, in today's world, $300 doesn't cover legal fees if you have to take somebody to court. So at some point, I know that's gonna come down the road, that we remove that, and go from there. Just as an FYI, that when we're talking about that triggered, that was in the ordinance, and maybe that was one reason why we weren't so eager to take people, because that's all we're gonna pay them. So, once we we'll send an email out about these numbers, we'll bring them back next 2 weeks at the council meeting. It probably won't take too awful long to really put some of that together. Because there's only a few real, we have to think about typing the minutes up and stuff like that, and what we think it'll take, and kind of go from there.
Franchise tax, where are we?
That's funny you should say that. We, the franchise tax fee.
Tax. There's no other way to.
No, I know. We received an email from Mrs. Whitaker from Duke. It will take approximately 5 months to put it all together. So we are planning on getting it started next month. The franchise fee / tax, and I say that because the franchise agreement has to be done anyway. It's not been done for the city in a long time. We really need to get that corrected, which that's a good time to do. So if we haven't already received it, we will shortly from Duke a copy of a couple of the cities, or one other city, probably the one that they like better than the other one that they debated out with them. But once we get that, then we can bring it in-house, we can get it to Todd, he can, start going through it from a legal standpoint, and then we get it through our system as an ordinance, we agree to this, then it gets sent to Duke, ultimately it has to go down state, be approved.
So 5 months gets it to the end of the year, which if our stated goal is still to eliminate the $40 vehicle fee, which I assume is still our goal. We've talked,
That's what's been conversation.
then the timing there, it works to a point, because it's the end of the year, the end of the cycle, and you're starting next year fresh, so.
Right, yes.
But we need to move on it immediately.
Yeah,
Yeah, we have a couple weeks before we have to actually start the process, so Rhonda sent it to us, or is sending it to us, one of the two, I have to look. And then we're gonna, and I prefer to get started now, just gives us a couple extra days back and forth between, as opposed to slipping and sliding.
yeah, from a transition standpoint, that timing sounds like it's a best case scenario for us.
She seemed to be pretty she said, I think she said later. Craig said if we started 1st of September, if my emails, if my memory's correct, she said that should be more than enough time to take care of it. So she was comfortable with it.
Can you forward that email to all councilmen, so when we get it, just so that we're all talking the same thing?
Yeah.
I have two more things. One is amnesty, which is covered, I see, in an ordinance, so I'll let that go until we get there. And the other one is, we have a very fluid situation with our policemen right now, and the chief gave a synopsis last night. Since he's here, I would ask that you ask the chief to give us a synopsis of where we are with the police and part-time and all that sort of thing, so that everybody's on the same page.
I'd be comfortable if the chief is ready and okay with it.
That's fine.
I guess I should have warned you.
Currently, the officer who's leaving, his last day of employment here is going to be Saturday coming up. He is going to leave and take off. He's going to go over to work for Edgewood. The 200 officers, I spoke with them, they don't mind me telling you. One had an appointment with his doctor this past week, and they think that it's 3 weeks out before the next appointment to come back and have it evaluated. He is going through rehab. As of last week, he's still on crutches, it's still swollen. He was hoping to be back to work in 2 weeks, and there's no way. The other officer, rehab's coming along very well. That appointment is also in roughly 3 weeks to get a clearance. So that one is still pending. It could be longer than that. The county is still covering roughly 21 hours a week for us. The hiring, through the panel, the interviews were a couple weeks ago. Some quality individuals. One that has accepted the conditional offer of employment has started the testing process. Part of the testing process is the suitability screening, the polygraph and drug screen, and then part of it is also the background check. The suitability screening was completed today. That polygraph is scheduled for next week. The reason why there's such a distance between them in a time frame, everybody started hiring in late June. They started the process. And DOCJT, referred to from the Department of Criminal Justice Training, their co-branch is the Kentucky Law Enforcement Council. That is who oversees the POP standards. That's who oversees the training and the POP certificate, the police officer's professionalism. They've been inundated with wanting people to go through the suitability screening, the polygraph, and things of that nature. We could have found an outside entity to do some of this. By the time we researched it, submitted the paperwork to KLEC, had them review it, stamp of approval, it's at least a 2-week plus turnaround. So that's why we're sticking with them. 3 individuals the mayor has spoken with. Apparently they're all under conditional offer of hire. Of the other 2, doing the background check is going to be a lot more difficult. They're not from the northern Kentucky area. They're not readily available. We're going to have to send somebody down to actually go talk to them there and do the background check there. And that's going to take some time there as well. The kind of nice part of that, one of the individuals, his suitability screening test, he had just completed it in February for another agency. I know the sheriff is down there. He said it's not a problem. He shared the results with us. So we actually have those results already. I got them yesterday through the email. So that won't be a problem at all. So getting him scheduled for his polygraph and drug screen is going to be real soon. We hope so. We get him on hopefully next week. The third individual lives even further, and the problem is going to be is we're playing phone tag. His suitability screening was scheduled yesterday, and I can't find anyone with confirmation that he made it. That's the distance with that's part of the problem, long distance hiring. You know, if they were in the Kitten, Campbell, Boone, Grant, Owen County, you just shoot a little drive and you're up to date on information. Going to Prestonburg is a little bit more difficult. But that is where we stand right now. The first individual I spoke of, part of the panel, and I'd like to thank Councilman Cahill and Baynard for sitting in, Mayor Martin. We also had Pam McQueen from Villa Madonna Academy sat in one night, and the following night, because Ms. McQueen couldn't make it, Jackie Van Houten sat in. So it was nice to be able to integrate some of the residents here as well. I think everybody's very happy with the one applicant, the first one I had mentioned. He could be on board as early as next week, late next week. Problem is, since we are so short-handed ourselves, we're not going to have a full-fledged field training program to put somebody through. This individual's well capable. He's from the Northern Kentucky area. Back in the late 80s, early 90s, he lived in Villa Hills. So he's going to have a little bit of transition time for it. He won't have a problem picking up on things. What we might do is field training program by committee. The 3 hires will be assigned to an officer, and that's who they're going to ride with for a little bit. The other 2, when they do come on board, it will take more time before they're put on their own. That they will be scrutinized and watched and paid attention to. A little bit more than somebody just fresh out of the academy as well. It's basically the same thing. Teaching them what we're doing, in-house training, the programs with the computers, the MDTs, getting them recertified for the MDTs. It's going to take time, but it will work out. But I would like to say one thing is that the overtime problem, it's not resolved with part-time employees. To use the old phrase, rob Peter to pay Paul. Example is, if one of the part-time employees is scheduled Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday, and they're covering a shift, and they're the only ones there, and something happens later in the week where somebody calls in sick for 2 days, we can't use we could use a part-timer to fill in those voids. There's no overtime paid there. Problem is, the following week, we have to cut back their hours. So if they're scheduled for 3 days, 3 8-hour days, and they're the only ones on shift, the following week, we've got to pay someone to fill in the void. So it's not alleviating the overtime. It's still going to be there. It's just a matter of how it's going to be scheduled.
And we did budget overtime.
But we also picked up another 20 hours by the additional person being hired.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
Chief,
So that should help with that, even if it is a part-time, but that should help.
Yes.
There's always going to be overtime. I'm not convinced of that just by the nature of the job. I mean, hey, I'm subpoenaed to court or whatever you might have. I mean, there's always going to be issues to where we will never be able to say we have 0 overtime. I think we'd be fooling ourselves if we ever thought that personally.
so Chief, and if everything goes well, when do you expect us to have 7.5 officers, Villa Hills officers, on the road? I mean,
On the road independently, that
yes,
could still be a month and a little over a month.
okay, so,
And it depends on
even October
it depends on
1st.
their ability to pick up what we're doing, and we
right,
feel
and
comfortable with
our,
their
and our
decisions.
guys getting back from health-wise and everything.
Month at the
So
earliest.
I mean, is October 1 a good projection, do you think, or possible projection, or, I mean, if everything
I
goes
would
well?
like to see it. I would like to see it.
Okay, okay, good,
It just depends on the healing and the training.
right, well, I know.
Those are 2
You-
biggest
and you're-
elements we're dealing
yeah,
with.
I got that, but everything goes the way it should.
Yeah, that's a new situation for you to understand, but you've been open to discussing it and seeing how it'll work.
Sure.
Are we in a position now where we are ready as a body to publicly state we are not going to discuss outsourcing any further, and I mean outsourcing in any way, shape, or form? Can we end it?
I'd be up to say that we should outsource it. I've only said that I want to look at it. We'll look at the cost. Is that what you're asking?
I'm asking, can we put an end to the outsourcing discussion once and for all? We have basically changed the structure of the police department and how we operate. There is a cost savings associated with this. Why would we pursue outsourcing?
Again, it would be a cost thing. Are we going to save $200,000 or are we going to save $15,000? I'm not saying I want to outsource. I like our police department. I like having our own police department. But is it something we still should consider down the road? Possibly, yes. If you're going to sit here and say, I'll never say that we're going to go out and ask for bids, I can't say that. But at this time, I am happy with where we're moving. I'm happy with the things that are going on. Bringing the part-timers on, the 3 of them, we're picking up hours, we're saving money. That's the way we need to move forward. And that's what I'm really happy with. I have no intentions on this point in this near future, not in October or September, for example, like I quoted several months ago, at putting this out for bid. At this point, I don't even think I don't know when I would,
Then why don't we just say we're not going to?
because it's still a possibility. I'm not gonna say I'm not gonna do it. I could ask for bids, but that doesn't mean anything.
Well, I'm coming from a different, I'm coming from you know, I hate to say never. You know, I like where we're going, and I think this is really positive that everybody came out with three excellent candidates. And hopefully we'll get our guys back health-wise. But you never know, maybe 6 months or 8 months, what may change, what may, you know, that you may want to look at. And I'm just saying, I think it's something that if a possibility comes our way, we need to look at it. Whether or not we accept it or choose to go that route, I don't know. But I don't want to lose the identity of the Villa Hills Police. I want the identity to be there. I want our officers to have Villa Hills uniforms. I want the cruisers to say Villa Hills. So, or have Villa Hills on it somewhere.
Then what other options are there to consider?
Well, I don't know yet. But, you know, I mean, when you're asking for something, I mean, you can't say that there may not be something that happens 10 months from now that you wouldn't say, gee, maybe we ought to look at that.
We're just gonna leave this hanging out there in perpetuity, just one day down the road it might be a good idea, so the signs stay, the uncertainty stays, the divisiveness stays, it's just,
I agree with that.
I agree with that.
You asked for
I
another
agree
option.
with that.
How about a police authority for the Crescent Springs and Villa Hills
Yeah.
Police Department?
yeah, I don't think the political egos will ever allow that to happen, and that might have been our best option at one time. I don't know that it'll ever happen.
And it may
Well,
not,
why
but what
would-
if it does? Would you be willing to look at it?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's where I am. I'm willing to look at those types of
Crescent
situations.
Villa,
I'm willing to look
Crescent
at those
Villa.
situations.
or Villa Crescent, we can get the name switched around, 60/40.
But those are the things that I'm saying to you. I think to project the future and to say, we're never gonna do this, would be,
That's could
Yeah.
be a different example, okay?
Well,
I
okay.
think if you talk to a lot of people, including the members of this body sitting around this table, that the Crescent Villa Crescent Villa Police Authority, I don't think you have anyone that would not want to have that conversation. It works well for the fire department, that has proven itself
okay,
over
so
the
you
years.
wouldn't consider that outsourcing?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, see, that's the,
Personally, don't think that's outsourcing. I'm talking
Okay.
about outsourcing either part of our department, that would be the management, or all of our department, the officers, to an outside agency like, and I'm not even gonna mention cities' names or anyone else. You mentioned you wanna have the identity. I want the identity. I want our guys running the department, I want our guys in the streets. That's what our residents are paying for. That's what I think the level of service and safety that we should provide to them. And I
Okay.
don't see where outsourcing the police department is in the best interest of the residents of Villa Hills. Forming a Crescent Villa Police Authority, that's a different topic in my opinion.
But it's the same principle though, Rod, to be honest with you. We do not have control of the Crescent Villa Fire Department. They are a separate entity that we subcontract out. Principally speaking, it is.
We're gonna get into semantics now.
Yeah, well, it is.
well,
Is
yeah,
it
and
not?
that's basically what it is. And that's basically what it is.
I mean,
But I think there's a reality here that, and I think one of our officers just told us what the reality is when he left here, because he said there's no job security. You know, we've got to give these guys job security. I mean, we can't keep talking about outsourcing and expect these guys to stay here.
if I sit here right now, Jim, I have no intentions at this point. I can't see for the unforeseeable future to put it out for bid. I have no
That's
intentions.
all I want you to say.
I-
I know you can't
but
guarantee jobs,
I
and I'm
can't
not asking you to do
guarantee,
that.
and I can't guarantee that it would never happen, and that's what he was asking. I can't say that, but I have no intentions on it. I am happy with the way we're moving forward with our police department and getting things, we're trying to work on our costs, we're bringing in the part-timers, and as we sat here doing the interviews, and I think it's important that everyone knows this, I believe, and somebody correct me if I'm wrong, of all the people that sat in those interviews, those top 3 candidates were unanimous from everybody sitting
There's-
involved.
yeah, absolutely.
You know what I
You ended
mean?
up with 3 very solid
And,
candidates that are gonna make fine officers for our
and I'm
department.
comfortable
That's
trying to move
excellent.
that forward by 100, well, I hired all three of them. I offered jobs to all three of them. I mean, and that is showing, I think, and I even stepped out of the box before that by trying to hire a part-timer, before Brian even gave notice. So,
Agreed.
you know, I'm trying to move forward with this, and I have no intentions at this time on even asking for bids in the unforeseeable future. I have no
I
clue.
think that's what we need to hear, that you have no intention of
I
doing
do
that.
not, and
We
I-
need to give these guys some stability, that's all I'm asking
Right.
for.
And I think the residents need to hear it.
Well, and that's fair. I would agree with that, Rod. I do. I would definitely agree. And at the council meeting.
So it's off our plate for right now. It's off our plate for indefinitely.
Right.
Is that good?
It's a starting point for the conversation, I think. I want everyone aligned, and we're trying to make improvements, we're going about it a way that's a little unconventional for us, and it seems to have win-win for everyone's different perspective here about what you're trying to accomplish. I want to try to get rid of this uncertainty and this divisiveness and this thing that's just hanging over our heads. We just can't get anything else done. And like Jim said, we lost a good officer because he didn't know if he's going to have a job. And he was a good man. And we're getting a few good officers, but I hate to lose anybody in the process. And if you were those guys, and you're in a situation wondering if you're going to have a job, then you would do what you have to do to provide for your family.
I respect wholeheartedly that.
I want to open the community recorder and see a city not divided, that's what I want to see.
Let's do it.
Heat's on Stephanie sitting over there.
Pressure's on.
Yeah, Stephanie, can you do that for us? I don't think we are divided. I think we're all pretty much on the same page. It's a word. It's a word that everybody has a different definition to. And it's a word that, sorry, Mayor, probably should never have been said, but it's a word. Get rid of the word. I think we're going down a great path. I'm excited. I think it's good that we're trying something a little unique to see if it works, and we're gonna have 7.5 officers on the street. You guys, we need 8 officers, and some of us were stuck at 7, so we got 7.5. It's good.
Yeah, and with the way the hours work, we're replacing a 40-hour guy with 46 hours, and I get all the math behind that. But we're gonna have to let the chief run this thing, and we're gonna have to support the chief in this new way that we're heading here. This is different for us. And he's the one that ultimately is gonna have to execute it and make sure that we are protecting the city and the residents. And I want to ask everybody here, please give the chief your full support going forward as we work through this. It's a new situation for him, and he's still dealing with shorthanded department from the injuries, which he has no control over, and so let's please everyone support the chief and the department as we go through the next couple of months in this transition.
Actually, I want to thank the chief and the mayor for being open-minded enough to consider this, because this is not something we've been doing. And this is kind of a step out of our comfort zone, so.
Yeah, and frankly, we left those interviews all saying the same thing. How could we hire all 3 of them? Because that's kind of where we were. We felt that strongly about those 3 candidates.
All right, you want some minutia? July 1, when the budget's changed, everybody ordered police cars. We need to get in line, so please consider ordering that car sooner rather than later, the one that's in the budget. Thank you.
Yep. I will do that.
And that's all I have, thank goodness.
Now I gotta go back to Mary. She's asking for the dump truck.
Really.
That's actually already happened. I already have 3-4 emails from the dump truck. So, that's all you have?
Yes, sir.
I think we went around the table. A couple things that I have, just as an FYI, at the council meeting, I will be asking for the council's support for the approval of Tom Ballmer to the Ethics Committee. Tom's been around a long time. I think he'll be a nice asset to that group. The group is very open to having Tom join, so just as an FYI, planting the seed so I don't just drop it in your lap. If you got any questions or comments or thoughts, please don't hesitate to give me a shout. I was getting ready to talk about property tax, and I see that's one of the things that's on here to talk about anyway, so I might as well go ahead and we'll go right into that. I'm just gonna go ahead and drop down the first readings for the tax rate for 2013.
Now, do the first reading for ordinance 2013-16. It's an ordinance levying an ad valorem real estate tax of .214 cents per each $100 in real estate valuation within the city and providing for interest and penalty charges for late payment and levying a personal property tax .096 cent. Strike that. .096 cents per each $100 in valuation of personal property within the city. And in section 1, it states the purposes for that, which are, broadly speaking, operation of the city government, including administrative, police, and other authorities. So I think that's a fair reading, very first reading of ordinance number 213-16.
Yeah, look, go ahead.
The comment I will make is that is the compensating rate as calculated per KRS Chapter 132. It also just happens to be the same as the existing rate that we currently have, which is 2.14 for real property. Because it's the compensating rate, the city can adopt that rate without holding a public hearing. If the council wishes to consider a rate higher than 214, the city needs to put a advertisement in the paper on 2 different weeks and hold a public hearing right before the next council meeting, just like we did tonight with the road aid funds. And so if council would like to have that considered, I need to know tonight so I can get the first of the public hearing notices in the paper this weekend so that we can get our 2 required readings within the 21-day, the 7 21-day limits. And so we have the first reading, so we can go ahead and adopt at the next meeting. But if you want to consider more, I've got to know. You budgeted for the compensating
We've
rate.
agreed not to raise property taxes, and that's why I'm gonna say, that's my opinion.
I was just gonna, I asked the mayor if I could comment, just because I have experience as a council member and as a city attorney on this issue. And you say you don't want to raise taxes, that's of course understandable. Most politicians feel that way. But I can tell you that over time, you know, as you think about this, was it Craig, $60,000?
Roughly.
You know, so you give up $60,000 of revenue this year, and then next year, you know, you don't raise taxes in the year after that. Just having studied this in time, you know, by not taking that compensating rate plus, I think, 4%, you find yourself behind the 8 ball where you kind of lose the momentum of, to be able to keep up with the cost of government. And I know in Fort Wright what happened is that we looked at it, and had we, as a city council member, we said that had we been a little more assertive about taking beyond the compensating rate, we probably would not have had to have engaged in some of the other tax increases that we 3 times tried to pass a property tax increase that was defeated, and ended up going with this hodgepodge of insurance and other taxes to make up for years of saying, well, we're not going to do it. So ultimately, you may find, and I can't explain the underlying economic factors, but ultimately you may find that going forward, you can't meet the basic requirements of government, because you lose that compounding interest on that, taking that 4% increase, or 2% or 3% or whatever it is. So that's just my observation as a former council member.
Well, I know, I mean, if we don't take 60, and I get the part about not wanting to increase taxes, though, but if we take it, over the next 5 years, we're gonna gain $300,000 to do something with on a very small increment. But I also understand the point of not wanting to raise
Hey,
taxes.
I'm one vote, and mine will be no to a property tax increase.
I do not want to increase taxes.
This is a real conundrum, because the franchise tax probably will not get us where we need to go.
Mhm.
So unfortunately, we don't know enough about the franchise tax to even make a decision on that yet.
We have the number.
We have what we think is the number,
Right.
which is less than what we're getting right now in the dealer license.
So you're looking at if we raise property tax, but,
Maybe 1% or
well,
something.
whatever we need, but but then that would be, what do you call it, just for restricted,
We
just
would
for
restrict it
roads.
for that.
To get rid of the $40 road tax. Is that what you're thinking?
I'm thinking that, but we don't have any guarantee that we're gonna eliminate the $40
Right, well, I
road tax,
understand
so
that.
we
I
can pass
understand
the
that.
tax increase without.
Having
I
the
understand
final
that.
number from,
Yeah.
I don't think you can really lockbox it anyway, so I think that'd be.
Oh, you don't think we can?
To
restrict
restrict it, I mean, you can try, but
We can restrict $57,000, whatever the number
Yeah.
is. We can
this
restrict
council can
that.
just make.
this
it-
council can, but once you have that increase. going forward,
Yeah.
you can't.
Right.
Yeah. I guess we'll just, I don't hear anybody stepping out of the box wanting to, move this forward.
Well, I think,
I mean, it's a challenge, I understand that, it's, you know what I mean?
If I don't publish by Saturday, the first public hearing notice, then the city is pretty much locked into the compensating rate for this year.
and the 60,000 would be generated by 4%?
Yeah, 4%.
4%.
And that would be the maximum. you can
Right,
bring.
that's the max we can take, correct, okay.
Well, we could go higher.
Well, it is one.
Soon.
No, I would entertain that, a percentage or whatever, if it meant going for getting rid of the $40 in tax. If that was a combination
Which
of,
we can't guarantee yet.
which we can't guarantee at this time.
So I would say, let's stay where we are, find out what we're gonna be when we grow up, and then do this next year.
We have other ways that we could look at potentially increasing it if we had to by a very small percentage, if necessary, I think, that the committee, that I was gonna actually ask the committee to get together in the next couple of weeks to sit down and kind of re-energize that conversation, so we can bring it back maybe between now and the next council, if we can sit down. That would be great.
Doing this the wrong way, nobody's being elected in November, so this is when you raise it. What's wrong?
There is
You
that.
could, if you want to, do a first reading
Sorry, I'm worried about
of another ordinance that would be higher, and then table that at the next meeting. If you wanted to keep that open, and you could publish it by Saturday, publish both ordinances, so we could take, my copy of 2013 and state it at an X percentage rate, that would be the 3 or 4%, if you know what that
Yeah,
number is.
I would just need to publish that we were holding a public hearing.
And then you could say, you could have both, and if in the meantime you hadn't decided, then at the public hearing, it could be considered and voted on at that time. So, if you want to hold that open, or if you want to just give me legal advice, you can do it next year, obviously.
I like the idea of doing that, but at the same token, if we're looking around a table, if there's no interest to consider it, then do we even need to? I see a no, as I know a no.
Who knows?
3 no's. 4 no's, close enough. So we will just stick with the compensating rate for now. And we'll let the task force or the mini committee come up with some ideas if we need the additional funds. Does that sound reasonable? Next on the agenda would be the tax amnesty ordinance.
Let me explain the tax amnesty ordinance. It comes in 2 parts. So before I read these, I'll explain what's coming so you understand. The first is ordinance 2013-17, and that amends chapter 35. And I'll tell you what the amendment to that does, how it amends it and what that means. And then there's 2013-19, which then creates the tax amnesty program for this year. So I'll do a first reading of ordinance 2013-17. It is an ordinance of the city of Villa Hills in Kenton County, Kentucky, amending chapter 35 of the city's municipal code of ordinances by amending section 3503, by changing the due date of taxes, removing the limitation on attorney's fees, and creating a tax amnesty program. So the changes are, In section 1A, the date which taxes are due is going to be October 1, because that's the appropriate date. The attorney's fees in section B are not limited to $300. Instead, they will be, as they always are, reviewed by the court for being appropriate. And then section E adds an entirely new section, is that the city is authorized from time to time at its discretion to institute a tax amnesty program to facilitate collection of any delinquent property taxes, penalties, interest, or solid waste fees for any period for any such tax amnesty. The property owner who pays in full the outstanding amount of the original ad valorem taxable and any outstanding solid waste fee shall have the penalties and interest waived during the amnesty period. The city shall create a tax amnesty program by ordinance. So that would then lead to 2013-19, which we'll get to. First reading of ordinance 2013-18 is an ordinance of the city of Little Hills and the county of Kenton, Commonwealth of Kentucky, acting on a recommendation from the Kenton County Planning Commission regarding the proposed statement of goals and objectives for a new Kenton County comprehensive plan.
Number 18.
Yeah, I said 18, no, I'm sorry, I said 19, 2013.
No, we already read it.
We read that one. This is the one we read.
Oh, you read this one already?
Yes.
Okay.
This is the other one that goes with it.
Okay, sorry.
Got you backwards.
2013-19, first reading, it's an ordinance of the city of Little Hills in Kenton County, Kentucky, creating a tax amnesty program pursuant to Chapter 3503 of the city's municipal code to run from September 1, 2013 until September 30, 2013. And Section 1 has the operative part, which is very, very similar to what I just read from 23-17. So I think that's a fair reading of ordinance 23-19.
19 just creates the program itself.
Right, so if you want to do it in 5 years, all you have to do is have another ordinance. You don't have to amend the code, so I think it makes sense.
Question on 17, we just had it wrong. We originally had it, the taxes were due on July 1st.
That's my understanding, that's what it said.
That's the way it used to be years ago, I think. I think for some cities, it still might be.
But from a practical implementation standpoint, my understanding is it doesn't work.
Yeah, it does work.
Yeah, I can't,
That was Craig's doing, and he explained it to
yeah,
me,
I
so.
can't, I mean, the PVA doesn't even have the assessment rules certified by July 1, so I can't even calculate the tax rates before August.
All right, moving on down the list, we have a couple municipal orders, which are pretty straightforward. If you've got a copy, it's basically reappointing a couple code enforcement board members.
You don't need.
Basically, the municipal order of the city of Little Hills, Kentucky, appointing and approving Scott Campling and Kevin Erath. These are two board members that have been on the committees for several years now. The mayor and council of the city of Little Hills, Kenton County do hereby order as follows, that Scott and Kevin are hereby appointed to the code enforcement board. Their term ends, I believe, July 31st. I could be wrong, it could be maybe.
No, it is July.
So this will be August 1st for a 3-year term through July 31st of 2016. Give this back to you, and if you could do a roll call vote real quick.
Sure.
We'll do Scott's first, please, since it's on the list. Yeah.
So, this is MO. Is there a motion, please, sir?
Do I have a motion to do that?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Thank you.
Mr. Boehner,
Yes.
Ms. Balson,
Yes.
Mr. Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Koenig,
Yes.
Mr. Wisher.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Motion for Mr. Erath.
Move to adopt.
Motion to accept.
Thank you.
Second.
Ms. Balson,
Yes.
Mr. Cahill,
Yes.
Ms. Koenig,
Yes.
Mr. Wisher,
Yes.
Mr. Boehner.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
City not divided again.
That's the headline, man. We're rooting for you.
The only other thing I have down here is a possible executive session. From a general standpoint, there's been no changes that I believe we have to offer, possibly at the next council, potentially, but at this time, there's nothing that I would know of. If somebody has a thought, comment, or concern that we need to go into executive session? further ado, I'll entertain one other motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.